I'm Anthony. I work at La Ruche Kidiwi, and we are not recruiting. Just kidding, we are like everyone else. We do, for those who don't know, who knows about La Ruche? Okay, 2 employees. We do kind of online farmers market. So you go on the website, you buy products, you directly to the producers, and you fetch them in a physical location some days later. And we focus on making it easy for producers to have a short circuit to delivery. This is not the important part. We use Mocha, we use Kai, we use Sinon. Who here is like testing the components every day on a regular basis? Yay, not, huh? Okay. So when we started in December to ramp up this effort, we had about 200 unit tests. Most of them were not components, it was libraries and functions. And now we're close to 1,000, like 968 as of 2 hours ago. So when we started in December, we've tried Kai JSX, which is based on React element to JSX string, which is a library that Vincent worked on. This is what it looked like. Ooh, too small. So we render a button with the React test utils renderer thing. I don't remember because we didn't use that solution. And you can see that you have to repeat all the DOM of the component inside your test. And that's 2 variables to type, so really annoying when you create something. And it's also burying the important part of the test. Like here we were testing the loading prop of the button component, and you can't really see that in the test. Like, what is it expected to do differently than the other tests? So we had some luck because Airbnb released Enzyme around that time frame, and we needed something else. So we tried this. For those who have tested Enzyme, it is a bit difficult to set up. There's a link here with the Webpack instructions, depending on your stack. But it works, and it looks like this. So, whoops. So you render with the, I didn't put the imports, but you import the render or shallow or mount functions from the Enzyme library. You render, you find the button, you check that you have it with a length 1, you check that use find as a query selector string. And here we can see that there's a spinner. So this is what we're testing. It's a bit clearer. I've changed it to test if there were 2 spinners, and it's not really readable what's happening here. But we found Kai Enzyme, which brings Kai and Enzyme together. So new assertions on top of Kai knowing about Enzyme, and that's even nicer to look at. So you render with the same Enzyme method, you find that button, and you can say, I want that button to have exactly 1 descendant. I don't care where. 1 descendant that has this CSS selector, and the failure in your test framework looks even nicer because you know that it was looking for descendants specifically and not an array length 1 or 2. So I didn't want to teach you about Enzyme because really you just go on Enzyme's website, look at the documentation, it's really good. The Kai Enzyme documentation is also very good. If I can show you. Okay, I won't. Anyway, it has stuff like as class name, if a component is checked. I don't remember, but the documentation has like 10 assertions that are really cool to use. Oh, and I actually put another example. So here the same thing. Like you can put in the descendants and the find method. You can put a React component directly, so it makes it really readable. The test name kind of reads like the assertion below it. One thing we've done, we've seen when implementing this is that there was a ton of warnings in our test suite because if you use prop types, you put is required and that kind of stuff. And if you just send a payment page, server responded with error, then all the props that were required will throw a warning. So the pattern we use is at the top of our test file, we have a base props or default props. We haven't made it a big convention, but it has the required ones. And then we use object spread, which is not in ES 2015, but we've set up our Babel rule to use that because we find it really useful. So yeah, we can use base props. When we add required props or remove them from a component, we can change them at the top of the test file in one place, and then all the tests will use that. And we've had like tons of warnings. We're not out of this problem yet because warnings don't trigger failures in our build system, which we have many attempts to do, but we haven't done yet. An example with a simulate, so that's from Enzyme. So for our payment form, we pass a SPY as a method to pay with new account. We don't use Redux, by the way, because we're migrating from a Backbone app to a React app, and we're still like the business logic layer is still a lot in Backbone and Marionette. So we're doing that transition, and later we might look at Redux and other stuff. So we pass that SPY of a pay with new card function. We find the form, we submit it with a prevent default SPY because we want that to be prevented. So we assert it with the sign-in, and the enzyme part here is the simulate function. So the type of event you want to simulate, and then the payload that the event object will have. Pretty cool. Very happy with that. Some feedback. Enzyme as a way to access the state of a component. You shouldn't use that because that really, it is an implementation detail. We've had an example on this payment form where we changed the state shape, but most of the tests wouldn't change because the props were exposing. So for example, I think it's easier with an example. When you pay on that payment form, you can pay with a new card or pay with a card that you've registered before. And we want to know if there's a payment happening. So we have a props called isPaying, something like that. When we started this form, we had a isPaying true false in the state. And then we implemented the card registration feature. And now isPaying is either you've clicked on the button to pay with a new card, or you are paying with a registered card. So just it's a different state. And we need to know with which form you are paying, because we want to highlight the state and this in different parts of the UI. And so instead of a isPaying true, we've moved to a paying with, and then the identifier of the button that you are paying with. But the props haven't changed for the isPaying general props that we pass to children components. So we use state actually, then we moved to props without changing the feature, and then we implemented the new feature. And there was like new tests for the new functionality, but no change in the test. So don't use state, even if it's super easy. We also have issues with sign-on fake timers and promises because most of the promise polyfills use set timeout, and I think they have to, so probably all of them. And that conflicts with the fake timers because fake timers in sign-on are overriding set timeout. So I don't think we've actually solved that problem. But just that created failing tests that we didn't understand, so we just didn't test this, which is not a good thing. Something else moved the business logic outside of the components. That sounds obvious, but sometimes in your functionality, you don't think about that. React and Enzyme are really nice for unit testing, but it's still harder than a pure function or a class or whatever, because you still have a bit more setup. So if you move your business logic out of this, it will be easier to test. And you will change UI frameworks because it's the JavaScript world. And you'll be happy to not have to change everything if you change your framework. And also for the combinatory parts of your test, you can just test that you're paying with a new card, for example, in the component, and then you have pay with new card with all the problems that can happen when you check that the card is valid, that the date is valid, that the remote server responds in 20 different ways to explain you why the payment didn't work. You can test that without. It's not a UI problem, it's a business problem. I have no idea why I'm on time. I have something like Rewire, but it's a bit, yeah?
You have 4 minutes.
Okay, so let's talk about Rewire. Anyone knows about Rewire? Okay, 1, 2, okay. You're writing modules because it's really cool, but you need to access part of the inside of that module to change the way things work. So Rewire allows you to change the dependencies of a module. So here we have a function redirect to that is just a window.location equals the argument passed. That's because you can't stop window.location, or if you know how to do it, I'm really happy to talk to you later. So we have this function redirect to. At the beginning of our test, we rewire the redirect to identifier to a stub. After each test, we reset that dependency, and inside our test, so that's the Sinon.assert called with part, you get that reference to the stub, or you can also store it in a higher scope variable, and you check that redirect to has been called with the redirect URL you were expecting. So we use Babel plugin Rewire. Depending on your stack, there's many Rewire variants, but if you don't have that, it really is tricky to test, to do unit tests. I put this example that we've noticed we have a lot of promises-based API, and I don't know if I want to explain it because it's a bit large, but we want to start those two methods at the beginning. So we write a bit of boilerplate, but then in our tests, we can choose the resolve or reject behavior of that API, or we can also check that this API has been called with the good parameters. I'll let you read later. And that's it for me. Any questions? Yes. Vas-y. Difference between proxyquire and rewire, I have no idea. I've never heard of proxyquire.
It's the same idea.
Probably. The idea is, for rewire at least, is to, when you look at your at your import or require or whatever the module system you have. It hijacks that method or function require or import statement to inject whatever you're passing. So here we're using a Babel plugin because I've done that 6 months ago, so I don't remember exactly what it does. I think it just hijacks the require function. We use import statements that are rewritten by Babel to require statements, and that has nothing to do with that. And then Babel plugin rewire takes the require method, like implements another require method so that they can change how they want.
So it's only works with Babel.
Yes, the Babel plugin rewire only works with Babel, as the name implies, but it's inspired by a rewire library that was done for Node.js specifically. So same concepts, just depending where you are, there's a different library to do it. No.
Overall, would you say testing UI is easier in React or in other frameworks? The fact that React really improved the UI in specific parts seems easy, but what you say in the doc seems like a lot of setups and the tools are not mature enough, maybe. So what's your...
Again, that's React, so like, if I was to start a project right now, I probably wouldn't use React, but we're moving targets, and it's like Larish is 5 or 6 years old, so I haven't looked at Ember too much, but they probably have a solution for that baked in. And with React, you always have to make choices, always. And that's great because you have the flexibility you want, but that's a lot of research and setup and problems also. Like, oh, this is breaking because I've updated one tiny library, and then so I don't really know if it makes UI testing easier. I've done testing before on Firefox OS, and we had no framework because we couldn't have frameworks. And we were testing we were doing unit tests that were as easy to write and as obvious, I guess. Enzyme, if you're gonna test React, Enzyme is amazing. KEnzyme is pretty cool on top of that. Yeah.
Maybe React, you have the virtual DOM, it's faster.
Faster for the test? Not sure. Not sure. So when it's easier to test components inspiration. Like the component approach is nice, so you can test a tiny part. What I've seen before is that you had to do a lot of setup to test one specific part, and with the component approach, it's easier to test just that component, that's the famous button that everyone does, or the I don't know, like an expander, a drop down. All those components are easier to test with React. Just because it's a component approach. I'm sure other frameworks with a component approach have an easy test, but I don't have many data points to say that. I'm just